First of all, this is a president who likes to bust people's chops, right? I mean, he does that to their faces. He does that behind their backs. That's been a standard operating procedure of this president since he got into office and perhaps for a long time before that. But ultimately, you know, if you ask the White House officials about this, what they tell you is they are entitled to have their opinions about what the Fed is doing, but they're preserving Fed independence by not issuing explicit orders to the Fed or expecting the Fed to carry out their explicit orders. Larry Kudlow, the National Economic Council director, was at an event here in Washington earlier today saying almost exactly that, word for word. But the question is here, to what degree is the Fed bowing to administration and Trumpian pressure here? Or to what degree was Trump simply right back in December when he suggested that interest rates didn't need to be any higher than they were and, in fact, ought to be coming down? It's not the White House's fault, they will argue, if they were right on the argument and it took the Fed some time to figure that out.
Well, that's an interesting take. I mean, bowing to presidential pressure, because there's almost sort of this feedback loop. The president says something, the markets get worried, the markets react to something. Powell reacts to the markets, which are a data point within all the data points that he and the rest of the Fed looks at.
What Eamon just said, Melissa, is the reason why presidents usually don't comment, is because when the Fed does move, you have the doubt as to why they did it. And Eamon, I take a little exception with the blasé, normalized way that you just talked about that.
Sure.
Okay, it was weird when the president first made those comments, right?
Yep.
I feel like they've crossed a line here. When somebody says the Fed should cut by 0.5 point, the idea that they're no longer directing Federal Reserve policy from the White House, well, I think that's kind of an indefensible position now.
Didn't LBJ have McChesney up against the wall in like a, you know
what, Kelly? If your best argument is to go back to 1964, I submit, my dear colleague, that it's a poor argument.
To be fair, isn't it just that only in the past 3 presidencies or so there hasn't been this sort of commentary, and so we've become used to.
Only since the dollar has become the world's reserve currency, since we have $20 trillion of debt outstanding, a good portion of it with it to foreign buyers. Only since America has really dominated the global economy have we not been talking about it. I would just submit that there's a cause and effect there.
Eamon, go ahead.
I'll
let you defend yourself.
The U.S. I'm not really attacking
your
Eamon.
blasé self.
We've normalized all of this, Eamon.
Yeah, no, look, that's right. Look, the official White House line here is no collusion. The White House is not colluding with the Fed to lower interest rates. They're just suggesting that interest rates ought to be lowered and saying that on television and in nationally publicized events. And therefore, it's not a direct order to the Fed, and the Fed is not bowing to any pressure at all. The Fed is simply discovering the right side of the argument and doing exactly what the president wants on their own. I mean, that's what the White House will tell you. I think one of the real questions here for historians, economic historians, political historians, will be, what is the content of these conversations that the president's having with the Fed chair? We don't know exactly what the president said to Jay Powell when he had him here for dinner. We don't know exactly word for word what he said to Jay Powell during that March 8th phone call. We don't know exactly how many phone calls there have even been.